84. Those who practice the radical reality way of Adidam as right, true, full, and fully devotional self-surrender to the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, realize the free hearts directly, beyond the efforts of the body-mind and the reaches of insight. Therefore, the great principle of the radical reality way of Adidam is the blessing grace of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj. 85. The ancient esoteric scriptures all declare, it is not this, it is not that. All the teachings point beyond all objects to the perfectly subjective self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state of all objects. All objects in separate selves are only apparent, limited, temporary, and non-necessary modifications of that self-existing and self-radiant divine self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state. 86. Adidar Samraj, the first and last and only Divine Heart Master, is himself that very source condition. He is the avatarity self-revealed, transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, and self-evidently divine person, the perfectly subjective self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state, the eternal person, the very and divine conscious light of all and all, shown to all and all. So he is, by virtue of his own realization, which is only the realization of his own bright, eternal divine self-condition and person, and so do all the esoteric scriptures also declare, affirm, and vastly guarantee. 87. Therefore the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, is unique in the world. The devotional and in due course transcendental spiritual relationship to the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, is the unique method of most perfect divine awakening provided by his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace to living beings. The practice is to transform the activities and functions of body, mind, emotion, and breath into real and constant feeling surrender to the one who is present in and as the avatarically born bodily human divine form, the avatarically self-transmitted transcendental spiritual and always blessing divine presence, and the avatarically self-revealed and very and transcendental and perfectly subjective and inherently spiritual and intrinsically egoless and inherently perfect and self-evidently divine state of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj. 88. Now consider the method of devotional communion with the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj. 89. The Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, is the divine giver of bliss, joy, happiness, and love. Devotional communion with the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, is the means whereby bliss, joy, happiness, and love are, by means of his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace, awakened as bright divine realization in his devotees. 90. The avatarity self-transmitted divine and self-radiantly bright transcendental spiritual presence of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, is the necessary place of devotional communion with him, and his avatarically born bodily human divine form is the necessary image to be always and seriously beheld, searchlessly beheld. The invocation of Adidar Samraj by name is the perpetual prayer to be remembered with every faculty and act of body, emotion, mind, and breath, and all his words of instruction must, by always deepest self-understanding, be rightly, truly, and fully made into real and present time ego-renouncing practice by the always to him turning devotee. These are the avatarity revealed and thus uniquely given divine means of true devotional communion with him. 91. Devotional communion with the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, and every moment's counter-egoic yielding of all the mind's attention into him, and of all the feeling emotion into him, and of the total body into him, and of all the breathing into him. These are the necessary constant means of self-surrender and of total psychophysical alignment to the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, who must attract and awaken the separate and separative ego I beyond itself to himself. 92. Only the bright and mere presence of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, can awaken the devotee to what is, beyond even the counter-egoic effort of life and meditation. Only our devotional communion with the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj himself, can, by means of his divine transcendental spiritual infusion of his devotees, thus surrendered mind, emotion, body and breath, replace our would-be communion with the heart with realization of and as the heart itself. 93. The devotee should deeply behold the divinely avatarically born bodily human divine form of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, and thereby find him as the bright divine transcendental spiritual body and very being of love, bliss, happiness itself. By means of right, true and full devotional communion with him, the devotee must locate the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, and thus by grace of the reception of his self-radiant bright fullness of love, bliss, happiness itself, transmitted and communicated mysteriously by him from beyond time and space and body and mind and separate self. That bright love, bliss, happiness is his divine transcendental spirit power that attracts attention and dissolves it in the free divine heart itself, and self-existing and self-radiant, transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, and self-evidently divine being, the perfectly subjective self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state of separate self and objective world. 94. The devotee of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, always devotionally communes with him, for he is the transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, and self-evidently divine being, the one and only conscious light, the non-separate and indivisible self-nature, self-condition, source condition, and self-state of all and all, who is eternally self-radiant as love, bliss, happiness in the all-in-all surrounding and all-in-all pervading heart space of the world. 95. The heart is pure radiance. The heart space is bright with love bliss. The crystal and the mirror and the mind reflect a light beyond, but the heart is inherently bright with the love bliss of divine being. In the heart itself there is no doubt of God, for only the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, stands abiding brightly, really there. 96. When there is perfect contemplation of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, in and beyond the infinitesimal locus of the right side of the bodily apparent heart, the inherent love bliss of self-existing and self-radiant transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, and self-evidently divine being is realized. Then, by means of the divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, the inherent and tacit self-apprehension of being reveals and magnifies its inherent and transcendental and self-evidently divine bright conscious light. Likewise, whenever the ecstatic mood of free being awakens by means of the divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, I suddenly confess the obvious truth. 97. I was not born. I cannot die. I did not begin. I will not end. I am. I am beyond form and quality and description. I am. I am consciousness. I am love bliss. I am smaller than the atom. I am larger than the universe. I am. I am. I am. 98. Before anyone came to be, I am. No one can exist if I am not. I am eternal. I am self-existing, self-radiant, and self-manifest. I am. I am without pain, disease, impurity, or dilemma. I am space itself, prior to all motions, free of all changes. I am happiness. I am. I am. I am. 99. I am the unknown and unknowable. I am not an object of the mind. I am not names and forms. I am the source of names and forms. I am the perfectly subjective source of mind and speech. I am not found in an object of experience or knowledge. I am found in the bright self-apprehension of being itself, before attention goes to separate self and objective world. I am perfectly found as the inherent state of being, consciousness, and love, bliss, happiness. I am, I am, I am. 100. Therefore, because the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, is the one and only reality and truth, which is the self-existing and self-radiant state of bright divine being itself, the devotee of the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, must, by means of constant and eager forgetting, perfect contemplation of him, realize and be the one and only conscious light, which is self-existing and self-radiant transcendental spiritual and bright divine being itself. 101. Those who practice perfect contemplation of the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, will, by means of his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace, awaken as the bright, non-separate heart itself, even while they live in this world. They will be liberated by that divine liberator. Indeed, their freedom thus realized is eternal. This is confirmed in the heart of a devotee of Adidas Samraj, the Divine Heart Master of the heart. 102. By means of the perfect practice of the radical reality way of Adidam, engaged in due course by all who most rightly, truly and fully practice and greatly mature in the radical reality way of Adidam, the devotees of the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, surrender the ego I and beyond the ego I to him, locating him by means of his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace alone as the conscious light in the heart itself, and they awaken by means of his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace as the inherent bright transcendental spiritual current of being itself. Thus awakened, the every thus perfect devotee confesses, I am, and I am awake by means of the graceful word and help of Adidas Samraj, the Divine Heart Master of my heart. 103. Therefore, the devotee should constantly turn attention from the dilemma of separate self to the free brightness of the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, for he is the inherent fullness of self-existing and self-radiant, transcendental and spiritually bright divine being. 104. Diligent practice according to the perfect practice instructions of the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, establishes equanimity in the total body-mind and releases attention into his divine transcendental spirit source in the heart itself, beyond the circle and the arrow of the total body-mind. Only then will attention settle and dissolve in him, the heart source of even attention itself, and he will radiate brightly from there, for he is the heart itself. 105. All the objects of conditional knowledge and conditional experience are based upon the ego I. Adidam, or the radical reality way of the heart, revealed and given only by the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, is not a struggle with the apparition of cosmic nature, but it is free devotional communion with the inherently free source condition of the self-contraction, until, by means of the divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace of the Divine Heart Master, Adidas Samraj, devotional communion becomes inherently most perfect realization. There is no way greater than this. 106. By means of steady practice and in due course, perfect practice of the avataric heart way revealed and given only and most perfectly by the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, and by thus locating him and allowing attention to dissolve in him as its source, and thus and so, by means of his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace alone, relocating the prior and non-conditional love bliss happiness of merely being, the inherently most perfect realization of the bright, transcendental, inherently spiritual, intrinsically egoless, and self-evidently divine person and self-condition will awaken if the inherently perfect grace of the heart blessing of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, is by means of right, true, and full devotion to him most perfectly heart found. 107. Even those of his devotees who are, by means of his divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace, most perfectly awakened in and as the heart itself, always continue to surrender at the feet of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, until the world is outshined in his self-radiant, bright, divine spiritual body and self-existing transcendental person or divine being. Indeed, their devotion to him never ceases. This is the secret of the divine liberation in real God. 108. By means of the divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, the conditional self, most perfectly surrendered in the heart of him, is forgotten in his indivisible conscious light, and thus and thereby translated into his divine, bright, spherical self-domain of being itself. Therefore, those who are, by means of the divine avataric transcendental spiritual grace of the Divine Heart Master, Adidar Samraj, most perfectly awake in and as his divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state, are always already free, even if the body-mind self arises in the realms of possibility. This is the bright, more than wonderful, and really perfect truth. Da. This is the Ruchira Avatara Gita from the Dawn Horse Testament. Here ends the recitation of the revelation word of the Divine Avataric Master, Paramasaptana, Adidar Samraj.